Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and we're going to look at 6 teams today and kind of analyze the impact Relic Delta has had on each of them. There'll be a 7th kind of bonus team thrown in there, but this is primarily looking at 6 teams and kind of trying to figure out what the impact, whether positive, negative, or in more of a sense, were they impacted or not by Delta. Obviously, we still have a lot to understand about Relic Delta. It's not been helpful that it came out in 3v3, and then it was also released with the most ridiculous broken Datacron set we've ever had. None of that has been beneficial for us trying to figure out Relic Delta. But this video is going to do our best to kind of break down some of these more common teams you've seen and the impact or not that Delta has had on their performance and their usefulness to your account. So let me know what you guys think down below. What are teams that you feel have been negatively or not impacted by Relic Delta? These are the kind of things that by sharing this with your guildmates in the community, you'll get a better idea of how to better strategize for Grand Arena and Territory Wars. So let's get into our list. Alright, so the first team I have in here, you guys got a sneak peek, is the Imperial Troopers. Now, in certain cases, if you're trying to take this up against a cleaning up of Jabba or a cleaning up of Hondo or whatever, there's some cases where it's going to be Datacron dependent. You're going to need to get out fast. But in some just random fights, those typical fights we are used to using this team for, Relic Delta really doesn't impact them enough. Now, I say enough. Obviously, there's going to be some fights where it might not work. But because of the Emperor's Trap with Piet, where they gain 6% offense and potency, primarily that offense stacking, as long as you can keep the turn meter train going, that team will eventually start gaining more offense and start hitting harder through whatever Delta you're going up against. So some of those fights might be a little bit longer, and you may need to, press auto and just hope that the AI plays it well enough that you can, get those kills. But I've found it mostly, when I say mostly, unaffected. It's not like I'm taking this up against a full Relic 9 team and expecting success. But in cases where I have had to use this as a cleanup, or I have used it against a team that I felt I could take the Datacron, I haven't really encountered a spot where I'm like, oh yeah, that never would have worked. It's still a very good team. Where the biggest problem you'll have is if the enemy team does happen to take a turn and you're really under geared, it could go south for you quickly, especially in, say trying to clean up a Hondo or even clean up Jabba. That can be a big ask for some players. And that's where, again, any extra relics you could equip to a team like this, if you're going to use them, any extra mods you have, especially on a Dark Trooper type character, will go a long way. The next team we have on the list is the Resistance, again with Rose Tico, and if you happen to have the Poe level 12 Datacron, the Focus Datacron, that I hate you, that Datacron is, it's been giving me nightmares, all 5v5. It's a very good Datacron. This team is also largely unaffected. Now, when we say unaffected, yes, there's going to be some teams that do better against it because of Delta. But the primary way you use this team is as a turn meter team, and its primary damage mechanic is expose. And that's where I found this team to really be unaffected, is that they're already fast, similar to Imperial Troopers. They have that ability to run a turn meter train, but their damage primarily comes from expose. And expose was not hurt by Relic Delta. It's based on 20% of the target's max health. So it doesn't really, because a lot of their damage comes from in the form of expose, it's not Delta. Yeah, it hurts in some of their cases, but in that case of expose, it won't make a lick of difference. What I also think is really important for a team like this is, again, because they have that ability to run a turn meter train. Yeah, the fight might go on a little bit longer, but there is that ability that you could just press auto and have some faith that the AI is going to play it well enough to keep the train going and for you to continue to succeed. So I do really, this is another team I've always been very high on. I really like the Resistance team. I would love to put more relics there just because I think it'd be a great troll job. But it is one that I think has continued to perform exceptionally well, even in this Relic Delta landscape. Now, the first loser for me is the Phoenix team. Now, you can see I have mine at pretty low relic levels, which shouldn't surprise anybody. I'm sure there's a lot of players who are in a similar boat to me. This was a team that you could still beat Inquisitors with. I've beaten Jabba in territory wars with this team, with the right Kron. There's some really interesting things the Phoenix team could do. I feel Delta has been extremely harsh on them because they're kind of a death by 1,000 cuts. Very similar to that OG Mon Mothma team, where it's just loads of out-of-turn attacks with pretty significant damage penalties. But because they were able to just continue to pile it on, you'd eventually kind of just fall over. Well, now that damage is further nerfed if there's any kind of Relic Delta, and the difference between this team and the two we mentioned above, there's not nearly as much ability here to run a turn meter train. You can definitely run a train to a certain extent where you'll stay ahead of the enemy, but sometimes they take turns. And I've seen it in a territory war where my Sabine or my Kanan or my Chopper has been almost deleted or got deleted by a Relic 9 opponent simply because of the Relic Delta difference between them. So this is one of those teams that I think has lost a bit because where before it didn't really matter the Relic level as much, now it's like, yeah, you got to be really careful and know what you're doing, and at times even just get lucky. Like, I'd rather you target my Captain Rex and everybody else is off on their own. So this is one that I do think, unfortunately, has lost a bit. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't bring them to higher relics. Like, they have a combat mission on Lothal that you could bring them to Relic 8 for. They're a very good team. So, this isn't a knock and say they're not worth building. But we used to really place value on this team because they could perform well at lower relics. And in the world of Relic Delta, that is no longer the case. Next is the Darth Traya, the Sith Triumvirate. Now, you gotta hear me out on this one. And you could go ask Egnards how his Gungans have fared against Traya in GAC. Darth Traya was one of these characters that a lot of us, myself included, had at Relic 3 or Relic 5. You kept them at lower relics because they didn't need a crazy amount. They got a lot of bonuses, a lot of health. They had that extra survivability. Once you killed, the primary target with Darth Nihilus, things get a lot simpler. Now with Delta, it's getting harder to weather that storm. Like, do you think the first little bit of a Darth Traya fight, you're just kind of tanking hits, and then normally, like, that first insta-kill with Nihilus is sort of the spark for you to start destroying the enemy team. It gets a little bit harder to get to that point when the enemy is dealing, 25 or, 30 some odd % more damage. And the flip side, of course, being if you're going up against a team like Gungans, obviously it's a little bit different because they have the shield generator. But say you're going up against Inquisitors with Reva, that team now, they're not only dealing more to you, but you're dealing less to them. So you have, that fight could be dragging out a little bit longer, giving them more opportunity to kill you off, or give them more opportunity to, kill someone before you can get any of your plays really started. It is a big issue for me on the value that the Traya team has, where, again, you could lower relics was fine. Now you definitely want to up them if you want them to continue to be at the same level that they were. And I think that's harsh on a team like this that is very free-to-play accessible and very popular in the game. All right, this next team also pains me, and it is, and I guess kind of going back up here a sec, we'll talk about Gar Saxon here in a second, but like talking to Gungans and giving credit where it's due for, Egnards and his favorite faction there. Relic Delta has been really kind to Gungans, and especially kind from the perspective that if you don't use a team like Traya that has that instant kill capability, you go up against that team with someone that, okay, you killed the shield generator, and now I've got to kill the individual Gungan units. Well, if you're going up against a high relic team, you've got to go through all that health and protection that they've got, plus the Delta. There could be very real situations where you might not get a Gungan kill, and the hold will be the full Gungan team preloaded, and they're going to get the shield generator spawn in the next time. Because that shield generator doesn't just go away because you killed it in battle 1. You go into the next battle, and it's going to be there again. So it's a team, that Gungan team did gain quite a bit from Delta, in my opinion, especially because there was a significant group of the player base who did have them at Relic 8 or Relic 9 from the Battle of Naboo raid, and now they're kind of reaping those rewards against people who don't have the right counters available at the right relic levels. So now we go to Gar Saxon and Imperial Super Commando, and this one pains me because I really enjoyed using these guys in a lot of cheese moments. They are fantastic, right? They really are. Unfortunately, their damage has gotten significantly nerfed, and it's not just the damage that they're dishing out, but what they can take. Again, they're lower relics, and that used to be a pretty still successful team against a lot of stuff where the relic levels weren't really as important. It was the mechanics. Now, you could be going up against a team that could potentially one-shot those guys, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, you know, and it pains me because I really like them, and the Dark Side Mando team is a lot of fun, but they're not something you could just invest low relics in and expect the same level, the same caliber of play that we were getting before Delta was released. And before we go on to the next team, I do want to kind of mention that for all of these teams that, you know, many of them won't be the same now because of Delta, right? And it's not to say that they might not still be worth investing in, worth, you know, gearing up. But it's maybe the level of use that you can get out of them, where I could look at my, you know, going up to say, you know, this Hera team, right? I mean, in Territory Wars, I could use that to kill a Jabba team. Now that's not going to happen anymore. It sucks, but that's kind of the truth, right? And so I just have to lower my expectations of what that team can do until I would potentially get back to that Relic Delta. Finally, the last team here is the New Batch, and this team, low-key, they still kind of slap. I've been very impressed with this team in the Relic Delta, where I felt they've still done really good things. And I think that's a testament to some of these newer teams that Capital Games has released, where there's additional mechanics outside of just raw damage to make them valuable and to make them a really important part of your roster. I'm very curious to see how this team continues to do as time goes on, because for all we know, this could be I saw somebody make a comment like this could be a very niche team, similar to like OG Night Sisters are, where OG Night Sisters right now, there's some very niche things they do, there's a lot of fun stuff, but they're not what would be considered a backbone team of your roster, and I think New Batch kind of fits that perfectly. For a lot of us, they're not a backbone team. They're a team that we can pull out from time to time when in desperation or to potentially clean something up. But they're not one that we're looking at as a mainstay in our roster and going to make sure that our mods are, you know, out of their minds. It's just not reality for this team. So those are 6 teams, you know, 7 if you count the Gungans, and the impact that Relic Delta has had on them. Let me know your thoughts down below. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.